Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today's painting is going to be a desertscape. I took this picture about a year ago and it was so beautiful and it inspired me to paint this. So starting off, I went through and created the sky. So the sky in the original picture was actually pretty light and it accented these dark clouds beautifully. So I'm going in with a really light blue and blending it in with a little bit of yellow. The key to blending the sky is not to overblend. So where the blue overlaps the yellow, make sure that you don't overblend there because that will actually create a muddy look. Instead, place both of your colors as close as possible to each other, and then using a clean brush, go over the area with that clean brush in an X pattern, which will blend it very beautifully and create a nice subtle transition. After finishing the ground, which I used a similar technique that I used on the sky to complete, I went in and dropped in the clouds. So I knew that I wanted the clouds to be fluffy and dark, so I used a mid-tone purple. I didn't mix it completely because I knew I wanted the kind of color contrast in there. So I did mix blue and red to make a nice purple. So I blocked out the clouds in the shape that I liked. So I like the fact that the way that the clouds are shaped, it kind of complements the fact that I'm using a round canvas, which was really exciting because this is actually the first time I've ever used a round canvas. So after blocking out the main shape, I went through and blended the very edges. So I knew I wanted to keep the center mass of it very dark and even the lower edges. So I just blended out the top edges of all the cloud shapes in order to kind of create a nice fluffy cloud look. After creating the base color, the midtone, I went through and added depth and texture with white, which I used at the very top, and a nice dark purple. I created the dark purple by mixing in a little extra blue than in the rest of the clouds, so it kind of created a nice dark color. I was never really completely finished with these clouds because I felt like they needed a little bit more, and that's the thing about art is keep going back. Don't be afraid to go back over and rework something. Once I had added detail to the actual desert floor, it really needed some extra details in order to make it look more like a complete picture. Here I'm just playing around with the color of the sunset itself. So the sunset in the original picture was in the midst of all the really dark clouds, and I kind of wanted to make sure that that was nice and bright, but all the colors I was using made it look kind of dull. So I went through and just painted it through with a little bit of white mixed with some orange. After I completed the sky, I went through and worked on the desert floor. So I knew that I didn't want the desert floor to distract from the sunset. I wanted the sunset to be kind of the centerpiece of this. Keeping that in mind, I created texture on the desert floor by adding a few bushes. Later I will add texture to the bushes by adding some shadow and some bright spots. And also to kind of frame the sunset itself, I'm going to add the indication of cacti and dead trees up against the skyline, and then a few cacti right in the foreground. A tip for creating images in the foreground of your paintings, I usually like to kind of put the most detail in the foreground. That way, it looks more true to life. Also, while working on this painting, I searched for a lot of reference photos. I knew what I was going for. I had my main reference photo, but my main reference photo didn't have any cacti in it. So I looked up cacti at sunset, which was a really good starting point to kind of guide me along how the light and the dark play on cacti at sunset. I also took this chance to go through and darken the desert floor. Darkening the desert floor allowed it to look more like a sunset, which I didn't think it captured before I darkened it with blue. And I think it really kind of helped add that nice darkness that I was looking for. I also wanted to make sure that all of the warmth came from the sunset and not from the desert floor. This really helps contribute to the sunset being kind of the center of attention because that is where the different colors and textures come from. On both the foreground cacti and the middle ground cacti, I put a little bit of a lighter color on them instead of just the dark green. This also kind of helped add depth to the cacti. helping them appear a little bit more round. As I darkened the skyline, I took that same color and kind of created a little bit more texture along the skyline because I didn't think there was enough there, and it made it look a lot more realistic and a lot less barren. My final tip of the day, once I was completely finished with this painting, or thought that I set it aside for about a week. I didn't feel like it was quite complete, so I set it aside in order to kind of figure out what was missing or what I thought was missing. And thus finishes my painting for this week. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Tell us what you thought by commenting down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye!